welcome to Roundtable. I'm your host, Adam Cooke. On this week's show, we look back at two recent presentations to Richmond Municipal Council's latest regular monthly meeting. In just a little while, you're going to hear from Olivia Melnick. She's the Strait Area's Regional Director for Nova Scotia Early Childhood Development Intervention Services. And you're going to hear from Olivia Melnick about how Richmond County children are faring as they get ready to enter the school system. But we begin with a presentation from the Commanding Officer of Richmond District RCMP. Sergeant Ed Nugent first arrived in the area 3 years ago, and he's seen a lot about how Richmond RCMP carry out their duties in the main offices in St. Peter's and Arishat, and also in a smaller office at Boudreau First Nation. But do we need 3 of those offices? Could there be one central office serving Richmond County and a second one serving Boudreau? And how are Richmond District RCMP faring out in being able to bring people to justice and make arrests on common issues such as speeding and littering? Well, Sergeant Nugent had all that and more in his presentation to Richmond Municipal Council on November 28th. So here is that presentation from the Commanding Officer of the Richmond District RCMP, Sergeant Ed Nugent, right now.
My points tonight will be crime and traffic enforcement statistics for 2022, littering prevention and enforcement, something that we corresponded about a little while back, so I figured we'd speak about that a little bit, and I can get some perspectives maybe from you about the issue on that here, because it's not something that had been on our radar before I got an email from you, Warden. So. Then I'm going to speak briefly about major event planning, and just a quick slide about the state of our police district here at the end. So first of all, here's some basic statistics. This is January 1, 2022 until the 24th. So that's when I pulled some statistics off of our reporting system. So we've had 2,368 police files so far this year. That includes all like traffic stops resulting in paper. So anything self-generated by the police officers is in that as well. They're not all just calls from the public, but the majority of those would be calls from the public or visits to the front counters at either St. Peter's or Arishat detachments. And of course, this includes our 3 detachments, but we don't have front counter service at Chapel Island Detachment, Boudreau. We had 75 files so far this year that resulted in criminal charges being laid, and I just included a few examples of what those charges are. We've had 12 assault charges laid. A couple of those were the more serious assaults with a weapon or causing bodily harm or aggravated assault, 1 assault on a police officer as well. We've had 4 sexual assault charges laid this year, unfortunately, 4 investigations that resulted in charges. 13 impaired driving charges this year. That's a fairly busy year for us in that area, which is it's not necessarily concerning, and it partly reflects the fact that my folks have been busy out there looking, patrolling, working hard, doing a lot of proactive work. One file that I thought was interesting, saddening as well, but we had a charge for distributing intimate images, which is a fairly new charge in the criminal code that was just added within the last few years. In order, the government created that charge in order to combat the rising problem of revenge videos and stuff like that are being put on the internet. The issues with people after a breakup or whatever, publishing images or videos that were taken in a private setting. So it's now thankfully a criminal offense, and we've actually sworn a charge of that this year here in Richmond. So. Also, we had probably our biggest one issue is failing to comply with court conditions. We get a lot of charges, and that's true in all the places I've worked in the past. We've had 13 charges this year or 13 files resulting in charges. There'll be more on each one failing to comply. So that's bail usually, either released by the police prior to court. Some of those are probation charges as well, but most of those would be bail, either our release documents or a judge's. So then just some basic traffic numbers. Again, members have been busy. They've issued 387 tickets so far this year. Most of my people are out, whenever they get some free time, they're out on the road. So it's good to see it's not just about writing tickets. It's about being seen and getting out and in the community and just being busy when they don't have any paperwork to do. And I always like to see good traffic contact numbers, and I think these are pretty good. 427 written warnings, so they're pretty even-handed between tickets and warnings. Defect notices, that's for something wrong with the vehicle, so they're directed to have it fixed. 10 of those. 115 check stops. That's the number I'm most proud of there out of the traffic numbers. They did, Darren Legier got one driver at a check stop. So, hey, doesn't seem like a lot, one impaired driver out of 115 check stops, but that's one person off the road that we wouldn't have encountered otherwise. So I take that as a big win. And Bob Short took out a deer with our Tahoe, so I had to throw that on there too.
That's not a competition either.
No, it isn't.
No.
No, that poor old Tahoe, it's got 235,000 kilometers on it, and I had to get it fixed. But I'm promised that there's money in the budget provincially. There's no money in the budget, but it sounds like our leadership is gonna push past the budget because they've finally heard the cries from the counties that we were dangerously short on serviceable vehicles all across Nova Scotia. I think that budget probably hadn't been increased in a very long time, and we were hurting badly for vehicles. So I'm promised that there's some hope in the future that we'll get some replacements, but right now we're doing okay. So this is the littering thing. I'm not sure how big an issue that's been here at council. It's something that came up in previous meetings about. I have to say, I will be honest, I was a little bit surprised by that because I was quite pleasantly surprised when I arrived here at how little trash I've seen in comparison to some other places I've worked, but obviously there is still an issue. There's always going to be a few people that make a mess, and if it's something that the county would like us to focus on. Obviously we have some spare time to be out doing traffic enforcement and stuff like that, so I've sent an email to my folks outlining their powers. I don't think they were all necessarily, or maybe any of them were familiar with the fact that there's a very strong provincial charge for littering. Everybody thought it was a bylaw thing, myself included, but it's not here in Nova Scotia. There's a very simple to use section 99(1), I think, of the Environment Act for Nova Scotia, and it's nearly a $500 fine. So, so I've spread that out. So, and it's just as easy for my people to do as issuing a speeding ticket. It's right in the same system. It's all. So I've encouraged them to use that when appropriate and at least issue warnings. The problem for us enforcement wise is that people don't usually throw the trash bag out the window when there's a marked police car near them or a uniformed member. But if maybe we want to talk about some communication to people, just to community members about calling us, that some education around the fact that there is enforcement power for the police. So that's not too small an issue for people to call us about. We're happy to deal with that.
So do you mind if I ask?
Yeah, of course.
Typically what is happening is somebody is driving along in their car and you see somebody throw trash out the window. If you report them, what are the odds that anything is going to come of that?
License plate.
License plate. You need a license plate.
License plate. If it's not a very distinctive vehicle, or somebody, if you don't know the name of the person that you're calling about, the biggest thing now, of course, we always ask people not to follow or do anything untoward to get that license plate. Yeah. But a lot of people don't think of it at the time because the car is there in front of them and it's so obvious. Well, of course, it's that blue F-150, but there's a lot of blue F-150s or whatever out there. So nobody, I found 90% of the time, anecdotally for me, when I ask about a license plate, somebody's like, "Oh wow, I didn't even think to get that." That's the big key for us, because at least we can go issue a written warning to the registered owner.
Yeah.
And what about identifying information? So like, I always say large garbage littering is also an issue.
Yes, and that's a separate section too under the Environment Act with a heavier penalty.
Right, and so that's also something that
Yeah,
you're
we
able to
can.
enforce.
Now, obviously, those aren't core policing issues,
course
but we're not especially, extremely busy here. Summer months are busy for us, but we have a slowdown every year in the winter, and even at our peak days, most of the time we're able to deal with those things. It's not something that we would discourage people from coming to us with here. In some other places, maybe I'd have a different line on that, but we're able to handle that sort of thing here. The community or the municipality has a bylaw.
On littering?
Any kind of, bylaw enforcement person? I know there's
No, we do not.
Oh, there's no general, there
No,
is an
we have
animal control.
We have a dog control
Okay,
officer, but
doesn't do any other,
it's strictly.
okay, all right, because that would
Canine.
be,
No other
Right,
registered
that's
bylaws.
the, yeah.
pardon me?
And no other registered bylaws.
No, and I guess that
DOJ.
bylaw person wouldn't be able to issue any fines under the provincial acts either, no, so, okay, that wouldn't work. No, we can do
We're
it
exploring options on bylaws
We
right
are
now.
totally.
for
exploring
littering,
options.
just to, or for
All
other
kinds of
things, yeah.
For
Good.
enforcement,
Yeah.
general. And then registering the bylaws with the DOJ so that they're enforceable.
Yes, okay, because I know that a lot of the Nova Scotia municipal bylaws, they're sort of shared amongst municipalities right across the province, correct? There's like a general set for,
Not really.
okay.
No, there's a lot of common ones, but
All right.
they have to be enacted within each jurisdiction when it comes to a bylaw.
Okay, all right, gotcha. So yeah, that's
Okay,
that there, but we're open to suggestion, and we're certainly willing to assist with that if there's a role for us, and there is a
so
role for us.
probably that discussion could take place through police advisory and then,
Sure.
does
Yeah,
that make
I'll talk
sense,
to the
or-
yeah, that's a
yeah,
great idea.
okay.
Now, this was my quick proposal about major event planning. I believe, Warden, I may have mentioned this to you briefly, but I figured I'd kind of spring it on council. It was something that came up with my.
We love a surprise.
There you go. Just an idea. It came up in discussions with my boss, actually, our district policing officer, or the policing officer for Northeast Nova. Inspector Mike Ingalls and I were speaking about this because it wasn't just here, but there were a few major events around around Northeast Nova. That's our the northeastern half of the RCMP in Nova Scotia, northeastern half of the province is one district for us, and so there have been a bunch of events this summer, including that rave that was out on the West Bay Road there this past summer, and my boss was kind of expressing some concern about the level of involvement of the police officers. One that brought this to light was up in I think it was in Inverness. There was only 2 or 3 police officers there at the time that were able to deal with this, and they were just running around dealing with a very similar event to our rave. And he was thinking there's got to be a better way to deal with this, and we discussed maybe some of this could be, I don't want to say downloaded, but shared. The responsibility could be shared with the municipality, and I was thinking maybe the emergency services coordinator might be the correct role, but I would obviously defer to council's ideas on that. So you can see my example of the rave situation. Essentially, we, Warden, yourself, you and I did a lot of the information gathering directly on that, and some of my police officers as well were directly involved in collecting the information. And in some ways, I think maybe it was a little bit more down in the weeds than necessarily either of us should have had to be with that, because we were at the point of finding out who the security company was, for example, that was supposed to be providing.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Way in the weeds.
Way down in the weeds.
But because we didn't have a bylaw in place and we didn't have a process in place.
Yes.
It felt, I've certainly felt out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, and obviously for me, it was a little bit different in that, it was similar to many of the other investigations that we do, but it was maybe something that didn't necessarily need a uniformed police officer doing the investigating or yourself doing it. So I was sort of trying to come up with a better way to handle that, and I don't know if there's any thoughts around the table here about how to do that, but my proposal would be that either the coordinator, the emergency services coordinator, or some other sort of a official could maybe do some of that information, could form a point of contact with these event organizers. And when Inspector Ingalls and I were talking, the thought was that maybe this would be something that could be spread to other municipalities as well, or at least discussed with other municipalities about ideas on how to go about that. So if there was go ahead.
I was going to say, I had in a different jurisdiction, we had special event licenses for events within the county.
Yes.
And we went out with them to the site to see their security. We had a person from detachment with us.
Yes.
And they signed off on it. That way detachment knew well ahead of time what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a certain size of event, EHS was involved as well.
Yes.
And sanitary services had to be on site as well for a certain number of people.
Yes.
There was a checklist
Yeah.
for these things. So everybody that needed to know knows.
Yes. And when you say was there a specific person in charge of coordinating that?
It was it fell to my development and planning officer, who was also the liaison with the RCMP.
Okay.
With the detachment out
Yeah.
there, like we had 3 detachments within the county as well, so.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be, a lot of the tasks necessarily offloaded to anybody else, but more just somebody in charge of, as a point of contact that can, when it's getting close to the event, I can say, okay, I'm gonna call this person at the municipality because they're gonna know, if EHS has been contacted, they're gonna know who the security company is, they're gonna know, because we will still do an operations plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I failed to mention that, but I have it in the slide here, that we created an operations plan for that, which we do for other major events in the community, but this one was kind of a surprise. It was something new that we hadn't planned for before, so there was a lot of first stage kind of information gathering stuff going on, and there really wasn't much of a process in place for how to do that. So
It works well because you can go over startup time, tear down time, what time the music has to be done, because a lot of these people planning don't understand that there are bylaws in place. We always do who's the nearest neighbor to the event, what's the access like to the site. There's a number of things that can be checked off to try and make things
and
with
we
the
can
pre-planning go way better.
and we as the RCMP can then take that information and plug it straight into our operations plan, so
Right.
that we, if things are kind of going sideways on us, we know, what at least what the target dates for everything are, and some context.
So we have talked about developing a special events bylaw, and maybe we can kind of add this to that discussion and then leave it to, for that to be worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if we could try to get that done before summer would probably be a good idea.
Yeah, because you never know what's going to pop up.
Exactly,
Sure, so.
yeah.
And thankfully, that all went surprisingly well, but I think a lot of luck was involved with that
Yeah.
too, and yeah. Okay.
Okay,
So, move on to just a quick update on things, how things are. My apologies for the lengthy slide there, but we are, for the moment, full strength. I'm gonna knock on wood. Yeah, it's been great. I have to say, I've been very lucky here. We've got excellent people in Richmond County, and I've been very lucky from a human resources standpoint in that we've had minimal impacts from a lot of the issues that are causing havoc right around the RCMP, but H division, so Nova Scotia RCMP in particular are really having a tough time with what we call soft vacancies. Positions that are filled, but folks are off duty for a variety of reasons, and that's something that we haven't had a major impact from here yet. We are going to lose Constable Talwar. Speaking of Halifax District, our staffing folks came looking because they need some folks out there quite badly, and Constable Talwar's time is up. He had punched 4 years of his. It's a 4-year limited duration post, St. Peter's. Ayrshot's actually 3. That never got changed to sync up when we regionalized, but Constable Talwar has done his 4 years, and we were expecting to lose him April or May, but Halifax is hurting, I guess, for folks, so we're going to send him off. So, And because our transfer cycle usually happens in April, May, June, we probably won't get another replacement for him until then. So we're going to run a little bit short for a bit, but that's not the end of the world. Yeah, recruiting numbers are low. I think I'm hearing anecdotally that is extended across police forces right across the country. The RCMP is not immune, and so we are recruiting. But as I say at the end there, things are great here. We got a great team. Everybody seems like they enjoy coming to work. I come out of my office at 4 o'clock ish at the end of the day, and there's always folks there changing over. The Airshat members often come over to St. Peter's just to say hi at the shift change, and I see everybody sitting around in our constable's area, and they're all chatting and getting along. So
that's really great.
All the signs that I attribute to a healthy detachment or district, and
That's
I'm
great.
seeing those. So I'm a happy sergeant. I like it. So and this is a great place to work. Everybody who comes here, a lot of the folks don't have a clue where any of these communities are when they come. Like 2 guys that just came from Montreal, I'd pretty much guarantee they had to Google St. Peter's and Arichat, but they're loving it. They're the one fellow's got a family. They're settling in. They're at the school. The kids are at the school, and things are going well. So I just checked in with him today, and he's really enjoying it. And both our new guys are living here. Bit of a change. Arichat from Montreal. Both of them. The one fellow, Jeff, I think he lived his whole life in Montreal. So bit of culture shock first, just change, but they're both really enjoying it. They're doing really well. Good guys too. So last but not least, our equipment and all that, we're in pretty good shape. Like I mentioned, the one car that's just shockingly fast.
Yes.
Where it should be replaced, but something, it's still working. Built like a rock.
So I'm noting you think that potentially St. Peter's and Arichat would be on a capital project list?
Well, I'm hoping. I
hoping.
keep hearing from the property guys that, the property management folks in Halifax that, they're not on there yet, but.
How can we help you in that regard?
That is a good question.
Maybe I'll just leave that with you, and
Yeah.
Perhaps we could
That's a very good
Write
question.
some
I
letters
will.
of support.
do
We're
some
very good at that.
advocacy. We're very good at that.
Yeah, maybe
Yes.
some information from the municipality, or even if we could maybe get some testimonials from people around the county that just about the lack of, accessibility or issues like that. Like
Yeah.
our buildings, they are definitely dated. There's definitely some issues there. They're not crippling by any means, we're getting by. The buildings do what we need them to do, but, both Arichat and St. Peter's detachments have been converted so many times over the years that
Yeah.
they were never designed for the purposes that they're used for now.
No, it's
They
very
don't have there's fire safety issues. Like for example, I couldn't get a locking door in our St. Peter's detachment. We don't have cell blocks in the county, which I'm not arguing about. Cell blocks are quite honestly a nightmare to manage. But we usually borrow Port Hawkesbury's, which is great, but we actually don't have a room in Richmond County where I can lock a prisoner so that the member can go to the bathroom.
Right.
They have to guard them. Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah,
And I hear like, well, you have police cars in the parking lot.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
if I'm being told that fire hazards are an issue, a running police car is probably not as fire safe as my detachment interview room. I'm thinking, I don't know, but
And I mean,
there's just
I
issues
think
like
it's also
that.
important to consider that these buildings are not just, they're not just places for police members and prisoners. They're
No,
also places
They're
for
places
community.
for the public, exactly.
And,
exactly.
I
they
know
need to
I've
feel-
participated in the restorative justice program and a few community sessions, and there is no way that anyone with accessibility issues would be able to participate in that program.
No, that's
Because
true.
you'd never get in and out of there.
We don't have meeting
No.
meeting rooms that are accessible at all. In fact, the gentleman on my police advisory board can attest to the fact that, people have trouble getting up those stairs. Some of them,
For sure.
yeah.
Okay, well,
To the,
we'll work on that then.
And, the lobbies are not exactly the most warm and welcoming and modern
No.
spaces either. The Arichat detachment, it's a narrow hallway with the old wood panel and stuff
Right.
like that. It's just not.
Is one central location an option as opposed to two?
I actually mentioned that when I first got here, like, why don't we have one building in the middle, and I believe it was proposed at one point. There was, I think there were stages of development on an idea for Lewisdale. That was where I'm sure I heard that was, does anybody here remember that?
No.
That I believe they got at least well into the planning stages of that, but for whatever reason it fell apart. But I suspect there would be opposition from
Do
the
we have an
folks that-
industrial park for you?
Yes. Yeah, well, hey, I'm up for any location, but I'm sure there would be pushback from some of the community folks, maybe seniors in particular, about, they like the fact that
Yeah.
there's a building they can walk to in St. Peter's, Airchat, maybe not quite so
No.
much, but there might be a little bit of a pushback on, on kind of centralizing and rolling out of the small communities and into a central location, but for us, it would work better. It definitely would, and I think it would be a much easier way to have one, modern building, so I'm not running 3 different budgets. And now, Bullet would stay, I'm sure, as a satellite.
Absolutely.
But it would certainly streamline things for us to have
Okay.
to have one central location. But
Point taken.
capital is always scarce, and
Yes.
and I know that there are other places around the province. I see some of the pictures in our weekly reports of of the other detachments, and I'm confident in saying we're ahead of some of the other communities. So, yeah,
Okay.
so that's it. No big complaints.
Okay.
Things are well. And that's it for me. Any questions or?
Okay, any questions for Sergeant Nugent?
I guess when it comes to recruitment, I guess, is that still the norm, the 6 months, 8 months in Regina?
6 months in Regina, yeah. Some of the recruiting requirements have been changed. I don't want to say relaxed, but changed. And some have been modernized, I think, and it's probably a good thing. The one that shocks everybody is the citizenship requirement has been waived. You don't actually have to complete full citizenship in Canada. You have a permanent resident is the big change. So that is, I think it was aimed at opening some doors. I don't know how much of an impact it has. Hopefully some. I believe I'm correct in saying that the entrance exam is still waived for people with a university or college degree. That's a relatively new change. So it used to be that everybody applying had to do the entrance exam, which was a slowdown. It was a impediment in terms of time. You probably added a few months by the time you got a date for an exam and then wrote it and it got scored and you got your results back, et cetera, et cetera. So that was aimed at speeding things up as well. I know a lot of things now, there's a lot less entrance requirement and more at depot kind of requirements. So basically we screen out fewer people in the entry stages, get them to depot, and then do the screening there where we have a chance to help them improve, in a learning environment, rather than telling them what they have to do at home. We get them there where there's facilitators and instructors that can help them kind of get up to spec before we turn them away. So
Yeah, makes sense.
things are better, but we just don't have a big enough pool across the country. Recruiting is a major priority.
When it comes to the information or your recommendation, when it comes to like littering and all that stuff,
Yes.
can we make some of that public? When
Yeah,
it comes to
absolutely.
our website or Telile,
Yeah.
or, here's the fine for littering, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
maybe some people don't know how steep
Absolutely.
that offense is, right? Or-
And yeah,
Yeah.
we can talk about it, but feel free to put something on, the police can enforce
Yeah.
this, contact
Yeah.
them if you see it, and we don't usually stress the anonymity thing, but if we get a license plate and some reasonable information, we can't lay a ticket without somebody's personal information if they're the only witness. Like
Right.
if you are the only witness to something and obviously the court needs to hear from somebody,
Yeah.
so we can't give that ticket unless we see it ourselves, but at least we can identify the person, give them a warning, and so if people want to not leave their information, we can,
Yes,
at least gets us in the door with some basic information.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great.
Following the regular council meeting on Monday, November the 28th, I decided to ask Richmond County's Warden, Amanda Mombourquette, what she thought of the concept of shrinking the number of RCMP buildings in Richmond County. Here's her response. Near the tail end of the presentation made by Sergeant Ed Nugent of the Richmond District RCMP, some discussion about the idea of combining the St. Peter's and Arishat buildings and making one central location with Boudreau as a satellite office. You asked, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but it looked like there was sincerity. What can the municipality do? So what can the municipality do at this point?
Yeah, I think at this point, what the municipality needs to be doing is advocating for more up-to-date facilities in the region, whether it's two, whether it's one. We need to make sure that the facilities that we have here are, like I said, these are not just facilities that are for members of the police force and prisoners. These are places that the community needs to be involved in as well. And so it needs to be accessible and it needs to be appropriately designed for that activity to happen. And I think of, like I mentioned, restorative justice, and there are other times, even police advisory committees. There are times when the members of the public need to have access to that building, and we need to design them appropriately, whether it's Arishat or St. Peter's, or there might be in the future something combined. I think at the end of the day, we would have to consult with the public on that and make sure that, we're consulting with, industry experts as well to make sure that safety is top of mind.
And now, as promised, here's the Regional Director for the Strait Area within the Nova Scotia Early Childhood Development Intervention Services. Olivia Melnick appeared at Richmond Municipal Council's November 28th regular meeting to provide some data on how Richmond County children are faring out as they get ready to enter their school years. You'll see some of that data in just a moment, but first, here are some general comments on how the system works from Olivia Melnick.
So I guess just a little history. Amanda and I have sat on a couple of different things together, and I had shared some information about the EDI, which I'll talk a little bit more about in my presentation. But it just gives a snapshot of our 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds who enter primary. So it's split up into different counties. So I just wanted to talk about some of the trends that Richmond County has been seeing over the last number of data sets. And next year we should have the new recent one for us.
Great.
So just to talk a little bit about our program, so Nova Scotia Early Childhood Development Intervention Program. I just like to use early intervention because I feel people know that a little bit better than the big, long name. So we provide specialized services to families of young children. So birth to school entry with developmental delays. So we provide services for children who may be diagnosed with autism spectrum, cerebral palsy, or just experiencing developmental delay for no known reason. So this is our reach across the province. So we have numerous sites. The little hearts represent where our early intervention locations are. We also have a second program, which is the Pyramid program. So that supports, it's a new program supporting our early childhood centers and supporting building skills and staff to support social and emotional development for the children who attend the centers. And then our little Acadian flags are where French services are offered. So in the Strait region, we offer French services throughout. The people we serve are children birth to school entry with delays in two or more areas of development, an established diagnosis, or a biological risk for delay. Most children don't have a diagnosis when they enter our services, but typically we're kind of first on the scene. So if a family is having concerns for the child's development, if they're not speaking or walking when they should be, we're kind of the first people that are called, and then we can connect families with any additional specialized services that may be needed. So the core services we provide to families are child development support, family support and capacity building, transition support, and case coordination and partnership. So a lot of, if it was just the child development stuff that families were having challenges with, but as we all know, families often experience multiple challenges in their life. So for the family support and capacity building, we may help with food security issues or maybe housing concerns and help to navigate different systems for families. And we also support transition. So our biggest one is transition to school, to help schools get ready to receive children as they come from home. A lot of times daycares may not be available to some of the children we transition to school, so this could be their first time even being away from their families. We also support different transitions, such as hospital to home, or daycare, or home to daycare, or those different things that require kind of outside of the family scope. And then case coordination and partnerships. A lot of times families are involved with multiple service providers, so we can help try to keep everybody on the same page. We do our best with that, but that is a challenge at times. So just kind of a snapshot of the children that are served in our program. Although this is a provincial slide, it really does represent each region. So if you can see, the large green wedge on the left is developmental delay of unknown origin. And the bigger purple and the smaller green wedge, those are ASD or suspected ASD. So about 25% of the children on caseload would fall into those two categories. And then the remainder would be a diagnosed developmental delay. So I'm going to jump right into our EDI data. So the data I'll present to you tonight is from 2013, 15, 18, and 2020. The next set of data will begin to be collected this January. So I'm going to just briefly look over what the early developmental instrument is. It's administered by teachers. So typically September through December, the teacher gets to know the children, and then the EDI is administered like January, February. So it gives the teacher time to get to know the child to become accustomed to routines of school, just to get the most accurate picture of where those children are in their development. It's split into 5 different domain areas. So I'll just explain those ones. So it's physical health and well-being, social competence, emotional maturity, language and cognitive development, communication skills, and general knowledge. So the teacher will fill out one of these surveys for each of the children coming in. And so it's all children who enter the SRCE. So I'm not 100% sure if it's in CSAP or not. I feel like they report separately for their school board. So this would be just the SRCE I'm talking about tonight. And then they would submit their results, and across Canada, they compare the results between counties, and they can even drill it down to like community-based, although we can't access that information. The highest level we can do is through counties. And then compare it to others, so that you can really get an idea of if things you're doing is helping support better child development, or if there's other areas or gaps that we see that we can help address. So some of the physical health and well-being, because we know it's not all about development, the physical health and well-being category looks at if children are healthy, independent, and rested, but also like comes to school like not hungry, comes to school, as tidy as you can expect a 5-year-old to be. But it kind of goes in a little deeper to not just the physical attributes that a child may have. And then social competence, how they play, get along with others, emotional maturity, that they can concentrate, they help others, show patience. And are not often aggressive or angry, because those are typical feelings, but the frequency of them would determine if something may be off. Language and cognitive development, so that they are interested in reading and writing, they're using numbers, using letters, understanding of shapes, communication skills and general knowledge, the ability to tell a story and communicate with adults and other children. So these data, so they're collected across the country, and the data are, the first set kind of determined our cutoff score, so the levels of vulnerability. So the lowest 10th percentile were considered vulnerable, and then the next 15%, so the lowest 25% were considered at risk. So, and that data, if any child enters school who has a diagnosis or a delay that requires an IPP or has requires additional supports, they are not part of this data set. So these are the children that would typically we wouldn't be seeing. So that would be the developmentally at risk and the developmentally vulnerable. So looking at the SRCE as a whole, and this would be the most recent data from 2020, we can see that the blue column indicates vulnerable, so the lowest 10th, and then the red is vulnerable and at risk. So it's split into the 5 developmental domains. So for the SRCE, we can see the 2 highest levels of need are around language and communication skills, and general knowledge for this last data set. So, and this is the 4 cycles for the SRCE as well. We can look at the 17-18, we did a lot better for whatever we did. There was quite a gap in between there, the 14-15. But the area that continues are the 2 language and cognitive communication skills and general knowledge continue to be the ones that are impacting our region the most. And this is the provincial vulnerability. So this is from the last data set. So, and that's split into our counties and then compared with the SRCE in total and the province in total. So we can see Richmond was fairly high up there. And looking across the 4 data sets, this is a really difficult slide to see. So the 4th one, the 4th stack is the Richmond stack in each of those graphs. So we have the 12-13, which is the bottom right. Richmond was the county with the most vulnerability. And then in 14-15, it was Guysborough, 17-18 was Richmond, and 19-20 was Richmond. So I just wanted to come and share the data with you to talk about our organization as well as other community organizations that we've been coming together and wanting to work with municipalities, wanting to work with service providers to help address some of these needs in the early years. We had hoped to do it pre-COVID, but COVID kind of put a damper on all of our plans. But I really just wanted to give the information to if you hear about things coming across your table that are child development related, just to remember these data and how important investment is in the early years.
So am I understanding the data correctly? Is that Richmond County is coming up on top of a pile that we don't want to be on the top of?
Yeah.
Consistently over
Yeah.
the last basically 10 years.
Yeah.
You had mentioned Olivia, but I'm not sure if you do know for sure, like looking at your first or second slide,
Yeah.
you had some Acadian flags there for
Yes.
Clare, Tuscan,
Yeah.
Antigonish, which I assume includes
Pomcat.
Pomcat.
Yes.
But I didn't see one for
No,
Mary Shad or.
our office in Port Hawkesbury provides service to Almadam.
Okay.
And we have a French-speaking DI in Antigonish who travels to Pomcat and Almadam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And so how do people find you? Like, how does one get attached to your
So we get
organization?
referrals from all different sources, but parents can self-refer.
Oh, okay.
Our main sources is pediatricians, but then we also get referrals from daycare providers who have consent from parents to be able to do that. So those are probably our biggest 2 referrals, and then parents referring themselves, calling to say, like, I'm not sure what's happening. I would like someone to get eyes on our child and see if there's anything more that they could be doing.
Councillor Sampson?
Yeah, I'm curious because of course I find the statistics very concerning. You know, Olivia, what are other municipalities doing to help support the work that you're doing? You know, what can we do to help, I guess, is the bigger question I would have.
So other municipalities have done some things to identify and connect children to resources as early as possible. So some initiatives have been to organize community we call them health fairs, but they're kind of like screening days is the behind term. So to get people out, and that can work to a certain extent, but oftentimes the people we're most targeting don't attend health days. So we try to get the information out to parents in the ways that we can, like have flyers at food banks, at doctors' offices, at different things, and just a trend in our work. Although, like child development, it has, every child develops at their own rate. But if you have parents who are worried about food security, worried about keeping their lights on, playing with their child is not their first priority. But so we often see, like in low-income housing, we would have been in almost every house on that row because it just kind of goes hand in hand with, not all, and not to generalize that all families who have challenges will have children with developmental delay, but it does impact a family's ability to support their children in a way that they want to.
Do you have some infographics or something like that that maybe you could share with us that we could share like on our Richmond County social media or our own
absolutely.
social media, just to sort of make people aware, a quick little, are you concerned that your child's not developing as they should?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even like Telile
Yes.
or any of those. And I know that we just started the Richmond County Collaborative Network.
Yes.
So that's something that I'm a part of, and
Yes.
Going to connect with the gal who runs Telile. I can't remember her
Becky.
name.
Becky.
Becky.
Yeah.
Who is talking about that. So February is Early Intervention Month, so that would be a
Oh,
really
excellent.
good opportunity to partner to try to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Great. And maybe we could even just pop something up on our website. I know we have a whole like services, and we have a whole, maybe it's more appropriate to a residence kind of category. Could maybe have a link to,
Yeah,
you know,
I'd be
your
open
services.
to whatever.
Yeah.
And it's for our French-speaking DI. We did have a gap in the ability to provide French services for about 18 months, and I really feel like that impacted our referral rate for Madame.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of course it would.
yeah, it did. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it really has.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear the gap's been filled. And
Yeah, we're definitely
Yeah.
starting to get more referrals on this side. So yeah, we're happy for that. But at the same time, we know that children are showing up at primary who maybe are not toilet trained or still bottle drinking, or so those children would have benefited from services, because when they get to school, our services stop.
Right.
So that's the unfortunate thing about it.
Okay. Okay, well, it sounds like maybe we could help to
Yeah.
kind of spread some of the information.
For
And
sure.
I would say too, if there is something like that, a health fair type of thing, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Perfect.
Because I think,
Yeah, I think that's something I'm going to
yeah.
pose to the collaborative network to see if that's something
Yeah.
because if partners come on board, it just makes the work so much easier. Yeah, and it could entice others, like other families, to
Yeah.
come if there was maybe something that was more attractive than just a screening,
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So Olivia, you indicated the parents reaching out. I guess one of the questions, maybe it's just one I have, but they would probably have it as well. Is there a cost associated with this?
No, it's all free. We're provincially funded, so there's no cost. And we also provide home visits. So we try to take away all the barriers. So if people aren't comfortable with having us in their home, we could go to the Colbo Poor or whatever, a community agency. They're always welcoming to us as
Nice.
well. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much. I was really
Absolutely.
looking forward to it. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I like the idea of Telile and sharing
Yeah.
this information, because like you say, Olivia,
Yep.
the earlier you get your eyes on a child,
That's,
the better
yeah,
it's
it
going
makes
to be, right? So,
the biggest difference
Right.
the earlier we
yeah.
can get in there.
So to get that info in the eyes
Yes.
and in the hands of
Yep.
parents,
Exactly.
that's important as well, right? So,
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
No, that sounds
Yeah.
great. I
Okay.
appreciate your time, everyone.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you.
Oh,
Nice to
thank
see you.
You too.
And there you have it. That wraps up this week's edition of Roundtable. Thank you for tuning in, and a big thank you to my colleagues at Telile Community Television, Callen Cowan, Nick Boudreau, and Becky Bourinot, for filming and formatting the footage from Richmond Council's November 28th regular meeting that you saw in this episode. Thanks to all of them as well for filming and formatting the interview footage with Warden Amanda Mombourquette. If you have any thoughts about what you've seen over the past hour on Roundtable, or you'd just like to make suggestions for future editions of the show, I'd love to hear them. You can contact me directly using the phone number 902-625-8863. You can also connect with me by email. The best address to use is adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also contact Telile Community Television directly with your thoughts and suggestions about Roundtable. The station phone number in Arichat is 902-226-1928. And the best email address to use is telile@telile.tv. Don't forget to follow Telile on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Our YouTube channel features every single episode of Roundtable, including this one, as well as all the episodes of our sister program, Telile 24/7, and some great new material from my Telile colleagues, including several French-language productions created by the newest member of the Telile news team, Gabrielle Sampson. For now, I'm Adam Cooke. Thank you once again for joining me for Roundtable this week. I look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.